overall. That's what we're hoping. One more change in central services. On the second page of the summary, you'll recall there was a line item called police pension additional. And for some reason, that was always put in central services, which is not really correct. It's a personnel cost. So this year, the police chief has included the entire request from the actuary under pension costs in the police department. He'll talk more about that, the changes, but I wanted to call your attention to it because you did indeed um, direct the staff to include the entire amount of the request, so we have done so, but you won't find it where you normally would find it.
Alderman Subak.
I'm sorry, back to the special needs and maintenance analysis or study. Who do we hire to do something like that? Because my thought was, aren't the department heads competent enough? If Roger thinks if he's got Paula down there and her desk is swamped, and she's got a big old monitor sitting there that I think Paula's smart enough or Roger's smart enough to say, gee, if we had a flat screen monitor for this employee, she could remove all this stuff from her, have more space on her desk, and instead of spending $40,000 on somebody else telling that stuff, couldn't our own employees tell us what they need and don't need and actually put the money back into them?
Well, actually, a portion of this would be, since we do have an engineer in-house, we have 2 engineers in-house, this was, part of this would be designing the specifications for that study, just as they did with the Public Works facility. And that would kind of answer your questions, because we would be going to bid for these services, and it would be an architectural service, actually, on how we could, you don't recall, but when this building was built, it was downsized from the original plan, and it was kind of scrunched. And also, we didn't do the infrastructure in regard to the heating and the cooling. And it took us in the police department 10 years putting in extra $10,000 a year just to get us up to where it should be for air circulation. Now, this part of the building is falling apart, and we can put a whole bunch of money in maintaining it, or we can replace it. But I'm not expert enough, and I don't think anybody in-house is expert enough to make the determination when we change this system out and go to a new system, or we keep maintaining the system. And Gary might be able to add a little bit more, because he's more familiar with these types of studies. But it's not simply something as far as space needs of, individual space, because I think we can do that in-house, and we will do that in-house. And we've made some changes in community development, and by getting rid of a lot of paperwork and putting in the computer files, I think we've saved a lot of space. We're talking about the future of the community and maintaining the existing structure as it should be maintained. It's just, as I was unaware of that, actually it's 15 years old. And we'd rather do that than like some other communities, they just drive the building into the ground, then they replace the whole building at an astronomical cost. So I think we're trying to be frugal, and I think that's a good way of looking at it. And maybe some of those questions that you have will be answered when we do the study. Maybe it turns out we won't have to do it right away, but we can project that into the future budgets. But right now, that's what we're looking for. And it may, I kind of put in 40, it probably cost around 30. What do you think, Mr. Holm? About 30. So we can probably get it done even cheaper.
I'm going to call Alderman Wesley, then Alderman Ptolemy. Alderman Wesley.
My question is on that, and I agree with Marshall on that one, but my question is, you said the building's falling apart. Let's go back to 2007, $133,820 were put in to repair the building. Now, last year, 110. What repairs have we done to this building with that money? Because I certainly haven't seen any bills come through for repairs.
Well, actually, we didn't use that money last year. We thought there was a problem with the way the building was settling, and according to John Forrest, we had to call a specialist to find out if it was shifting, and there was a problem with the roof, and there was a leak in the roof. And these are the types of things, or structural things, that we have no one in staff that's qualified. And with all the activities going on, basically we got through another year of doing patchwork and made some repairs. For example,
Except the projected is 110,000 to end up this year. So I think what Alderman Wesley is asking is, what have we done this year for?
Oh,
for the
okay.
110?
Well, wait a minute. Because the reason why I ask is foolish on our part that every year, I don't care what it costs, there should be money spent to maintain this building. So it was legally could have been the council's fault, or, I'm not blaming fault here, but we sure spent money to maintain this building. But now to go up to 169,000 and then go out for a study, well, there's no way, because we haven't even put a dime that I could see into this building. We have, by the police station there, the railings are almost falling apart. We should have had that done last year. We didn't do it.
I agree with you that should have been done last year, and we had some plans. However, again, with some staff shortages in the community development department, weren't able to achieve that. Also, if we're going to go out and do some of these things, like replace some of the windows, some of the doors, and on a large scale, we might look at the whole building, and that's the idea of having the information, having an expert come in and tell us what and how we need to do it, so that we can do the right thing, instead of having John Forrest go out there and eyeball it and say, well, we're going to have to replace this bank of windows here, and we can do this. Yeah, we can do that, and we can see that the concrete is sprawling and everything. But if we got a professional to look at it, he might say, well, here's are some of the things you can do with the side of the building, and we have to paint the whole entire building.
Mhm.
And there's been talk about maybe changing the color and that type of thing. So it's aesthetics. It's a matter of doing that. But you're absolutely correct. We should have gotten more done, but we really didn't know what and how we should do it. That amount was put in because we thought there were some structural problems that had to be corrected immediately, and it turned out that it wasn't as bad as we thought.
And part of the benefit of doing at least some type of study is it would help prioritize what tasks to do first, and then the scope and the order of them. You don't want to go out of succession, or else you might end up redoing something. Alderman Ptolemy?
Yeah, I just want to point out, okay, let's make sure we're talking about the right things here. This particular account, maintenance and building, okay, also covers your city hall cleaning, which comes out of that, which roughly is $53,600.
Oh, that comes out.
No, that's maintenance building. That comes out of your maintenance building. That's out of that account. Okay? It is. Look at page, central service, page 2. Look at the breakout, the description of what these fees are going to be used for. That's the key. I mean, when you look at this, okay, you say, well, okay, we had $110,000 last year budgeted. We're going to still spend $110,000. Well, yeah, we are, because out of your maintenance building, you've still got to pay for your city hall cleaning, your cleaning supplies, your pest control, weed control, electrical repairs, plumbing repairs. That is where all these different things come out of, is that particular fund. So I think we are spending money to do the things, but this is the account that those type of things come out of. And what Marshall brought up about the $40,000 for space needs is above and beyond what we've normally been spending for the services that we need, that the city just needs to do. You need to have somebody come in and clean the city hall, okay? I guess what I'm hoping would come out of this study would be, we have additional room in either this building or in the building over on Central, but we can't use it because it's filled with volumes and boxes of documents, okay? Which, for years I've said, what we should be doing with all those documents is imaging them so that we can get rid of all of those documents. And I know the city is now in the process of starting to do that. And I think that this is an ideal time to have an evaluation, because it isn't just a question of how much room do I have for my desk, okay? It is looking at all of the things related to the building. Is the air conditioning working properly? Is the HVAC efficient? Are we going to save any money if we replace it or not? I mean, I definitely agree with the city manager in the fact that I don't want to be sitting here, or I don't want a future council sitting here in 5 years and saying, you know what, we need to build a new city hall because, we didn't do anything. We need to look at what do we have, how can we take care of what we have, and do it in an efficient manner. And I'll be honest with you, I agree with the city manager in fact that Yes, we have some engineers that can tell us some things, but you don't have the right people that really can determine what are all the things. The doors, the replacing the doors, replacing windows, all these things. That's what a special needs or space needs and maintenance analysis would give you, is all that information, which would help us up here make a better decision too, as far as what we're gonna do.
Mr. Noack and then Alderman Subak. And
Yeah,
then
here,
Mr.
Roger,
Manager.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was going to defer to Alderman Subak.
No, I want to hear you first. I'm sure I'll have comments after you
But
speak.
I thought I'd like to clear up a few issues here. Some of the statements that were made are correct. Alderman Ptolemy makes a good point with respect to the building maintenance portion, that section 2-11. These costs are not only things that we incur actually annually, but we've had some cost increases over the past few years that have been more dramatic than in others. And one other thing that we have to look at and be aware of is the fact that what the city manager alluded to earlier is absolutely true. The systems that we presently have, operating systems, our HVAC systems, our thermostatic controls in this building have exceeded their useful life. When they presently go out, the cost to replace them is quite and dramatically more than it was to initially install them. Some of the thermostatic units, you're talking, instead of something that might have cost to repair and replace $150 to $200, now you're talking somewhere in the range of $600. The heating and ventilating systems, we're constantly having breakdowns and repairs needing to be made. And an analysis has to be made as to what Alderman Ptolemy alluded to, the efficiency of these systems too. My recommendation too in the long run is that we replace these systems that are now extended beyond their lifespan, is indeed going to save us money because they're going to operate more efficiently and at a lesser cost. But these are things that, again, as the building ages and as the system ages, they just become compounded.
Alderman Subak.
You're not going to get a person that has that jack of all trades hat that walks in and says, I am your building expert that can tell you about your HVAC, that can tell you about putting stuff on computer storage, that can tell about needs. You know, it's not. It's you, Roger, and it's people we have already in place. We have a building inspector, and John Forrest has been doing it for 30 years. He can tell you when windows are good and windows are bad, and I trust him. We have Gary, who has an engineering degree. We have other engineers we've hired now in-house. You know, we want someone to look at the outside of the building that's cracking. We have a local resident, Robert Joyce, Quality Restoration. He does it. He can come out and look at our building. So what I'm saying is this $40,000, you're not going to get. It's going to start at 30, and then they're going to say, well, we can only evaluate this. I think if the HVAC system needs to be evaluated, you bring someone in just for that. And you're not going to have somebody who doesn't have that expertise, because this study will tell you, I can't give you the expertise. I can give you on everything, but not that. And you're still going to end up spending the money. So if it's a question of the HVAC system, definitely bring someone in for that system only, but not to do this overall need assessment. An architect's not going to be able to wear all those hats. An engineer can't wear all those hats. And a lot of those people we have in-house already.
Mr. Manager.
I agree, and we were going to do some of that stuff in-house. The other thing we were looking at is updating the building and maybe doing some architectural changes that would, for example, out in the back, maybe putting some type of an updated awning type of structure to shield that area so it would be crumbling, those types of things. But again, if it's not the direction of the council to do this at this time, then we'll take that direction.
Alderman Ptolemy.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, when I looked at this line item, this particular one, the way I interpreted it was that it is what you said, Marshall. You're not going to get one individual. The staff, as I understood, staff is going to look at what the needs are, what they consider needs, and then the money would be used to hire those special people to look at. So it isn't just hiring one individual or company to come out and do it. I think, at least that's how I interpreted it, was that the money could be used for multiple people to come out, like you said, like Mr. Joyce, okay, who could look at the building, somebody that specializes in the HVAC. I mean, that's how I interpreted that line. Now, if I'm wrong, I mean, maybe, okay, then I'm wrong. But that's how I had interpreted it.
Mr. Helm.
hiding behind a $40,000 line item. That's okay, it's good.
I'm hopefully want to point out something that to think about. When our public works facility was constructed and opened in 1989, it was a modest building. It wasn't a Cadillac. It was a good hardy building to get us through. Unfortunately, since that time, there's been no maintenance to that building. Not really any maintenance to that building. Preventative maintenance. I mean, the systems have been allowed to go beyond their useful life. In fact, now way beyond their useful life. Dave Graff, our city engineer, has a little thermostat on his desk, and if he didn't have the space heater, his desk is literally 58 degrees on those cold days without the sunshine. And we put a space heater in there to get heat for him. This study is being proactive so that we don't allow this building to get to that same condition. That building now we're looking at estimating about $1 million. That's a preliminary estimate, and as the 2 or 3 years phases go by, that number may rise. So to spend $40,000 today, hopefully we can head off $1 million expenditure in the future.
Mr. Holm, when you say space study, are you referring to your study in your building, or the very studies that we're talking about here?
I was referring
Okay.
to these studies here.
Okay.
And one more point, and just to comment on the architect that we did hire for our building, that particular architect has mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, structural engineers, architects, all within their office. I mean, that's part of that firm. It is a little rare. You're right. Most firms don't have that expertise in-house. So there are firms, though, that can offer all of those services under one roof.
And just to be clear, what are we going after? A space study and individual studies of HVAC, or are we trying to get it all in one?
Yes, we're trying to do the space needs and the maintenance on the building, and what we should be doing to the building in the future to maintain it and get the most useful life out of the building.
And would all that be in the 40,000, or is it pieces going to different contractors?
For our facility at Public Works, we did not include the maintenance component. And our most expensive proposal was $25,000.
Right.
And actually, we ended up awarding a contract for considerably less than that. So I'm pretty confident that, even if you throw in the maintenance component of $40,000, as the manager said, we'll probably be more realistically coming in closer to the $30,000 line item.
So for the central services and for this building, is the 40,000 for space, or more than that?
Combination space needs and maintenance study.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Wesley.
But the special service building has already been awarded.
We already under the current, yes, last
Okay,
month.
so the 40,000 is not counting the special service building.
2 different buildings altogether, correct.
So this 40,000 is counting just
For
the
City
city
Hall.
hall alone.
Correct.
But
Sure.
the drawback I have on this whole thing is, and it's the same thing that I brought up last year. How did we allow these buildings to get so bad and then put money into these buildings every year? That's my problem here. I mean, the garage door you showed last year, there's no reason why that could be. Has that been done?
I agree with your statement. And actually, this year, the money that we had, $60,000 in there, has been splitting between professional services and the vehicle lift system.
But I'm just saying, we
So-
have neglected
I
these
agree.
buildings.
And that's what we're trying not to do with this building. That's exactly what we're trying not to do with this building.
According to Roger, we're already past the useful life. We already put this one in the crapper.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's falling apart. Maybe I'm missing something, but I haven't seen the place falling apart yet.
Alderman Ptolemy.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, to sit here and argue, first off, to sit here and argue over $40,000, I mean, is really ridiculous, okay? Because, I mean, when you're looking at the big picture, it's ridiculous. The bottom line, and, Alderman Wesley, you made the comment, we've neglected the city hall. Yeah, it has been neglected. You're absolutely right, okay? But a lot of that had to do with, with the way things were run within the city, not with this council, but within the city, okay? And now, again, it's a situation where if we don't deal with it today, and we don't try and put it on the plate today that in 5 years down the road, when literally, you know, Marshall, you come back here to City Hall and you go to open the door and it falls off in your, you know, in your hand. I mean, you know, we're gonna say, you know what? Those people had a chance 5 years ago to do something and they didn't do it, okay? Because they wanted to save a dime. And it's like, you know, sometimes, and I've said this over the years, sometimes it takes money, you know, to make money. And it's like, you know, in this instance, if we're gonna save money in the long term, then you have to make an investment. And I agree with you, Alderman Wesley, in the fact that we have to start being more proactive in these type of things, because you can't just throw $100,000 out to, you know, at the different problems unless you know what the problems really are. And then you've got to prioritize them so that you can figure out how can I get this, you know, to all flow in. So I definitely agree with you on that. And Marshall, I mean, to sit here and debate this building, when they talked about when this building was built, there is no question, they did the cheap. They did the cheap on this building. They did the cheap on the Public Works building, okay? But that's because the city and the city council at the time, they couldn't afford anything more than what they had. And that's a fact. There was, how many times did we sit back in this room here and boil because there was no air coming into that room whatsoever, okay? And it's just over the years that it's been fixed. So we got to go forward with this.
Alderman Coles?
Let's move on. We've talked about this building and that. Let's continue on. We've talked enough about buildings. Let's go.
Alderman Subak?
I support putting money into the building. I just don't support paying somebody else telling us how we should. I think we can do that on our own. Thank you.
I'm going to suggest we take about a 5-minute break now, if that's sufficient. Okay. I recess the meeting.